calling your as head coach. My name is Mel. May I have
intro here. I'm triple booked at this time, so this will be your group. They just came out of a meeting with Adobe, so they're pretty brain dead. So I'm gonna be happy just to listen to you to talk. They may go get a soda, a glass of water as you start out. But guys, Mike and I have been friends for 2 decades now, I guess. We've known each other throughout both of our careers and the career progression. I wanted to bring him in here today to talk to you guys. He has a talent recruiting system, but he's also a master of human behavior and analytics there. So a lot of background. Mike had a really fascinating background getting into sales and how he got into it. So a good story. So Mike, we'll let you tell your experience, strength, and hope story for about 20, 25 minutes. Talk to him about XP3, what it does. And then guys, what he can help you do is prepare to know yourself well when you go into interviews. So when you think about Mike, they're in phase 4, they're going into their final 4 weeks with us, and they're interviewing with companies and trying to differentiate themselves from all the other Jane, Sally, and John out there. So, maybe any tips you can give them on how to do that would be awesome. So,
all right, we can definitely do that.
All right, good. Well, I'll turn it over to you. I got to run over to this other call, but I'll be in and out. I'll be back. Okay, brother.
All right, Riley. Thanks, buddy. See ya. All right. Good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending, I guess, where you are in the world. It is afternoon for me. I'm on the East Coast in Virginia, so it's 1 o'clock here. Appreciate you guys all jumping in, especially after you just got out of something else. So I'll try to make it worthwhile for you. Feel free to jump in and ask questions with anything as well. So quick little background. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I've been starting and running companies mostly for myself, but I've run a few for a few other people since I was probably in my early 20s. The current company I have, which is called the XP3 Talent System, I've actually been in the process of developing it probably since 2002. But we really technically just started rebuilding and launched it about 3.5 years ago. So early on in 2002 to 2007, I was actually an executive coach and facilitator for the world's largest and oldest CEO membership organization called Vistage. Vistage is a group that basically puts about a dozen CEOs or other key executives in a group where they come together once a month for a full day to help kind of serve as an unofficial board of advisors for each other. So the members would bring their challenges and issues to the group, and then through a facilitated process, I would try to help them to come up with solutions to these problems. So a couple of key things that I learned that led to the development of the company I have now, which is XP3 Talent, and the XP3 Talent System in particular, was that I found out that almost all business issues are actually people issues. Meaning, if a business has these problems and challenges or issues, whatever you want to call them, it's because you don't have the people who know how to solve those problems or issues. And proof of that, like I said, there's about a dozen to 15 members in each group. So, and every month for a full day, the members would come together and bring these various issues. And again, I don't care if they were sales and marketing issues, financial issues, production issues, whatever. We were always able to come up with at least 2 or 3 possible solutions for that member to go back and implement. Half the time or more, a percentage of the members would actually speak from their direct experience, saying, hey, this is, I had that problem. This is how I dealt with it. Here's what not to do, what we learned there. Here's, what ended up working for us. But even again, like I said, when nobody had dealt with that issue before, you put a dozen or so smart people in a room together, and they can usually come up with 2 or 3 good solutions. So that taught me most business problems are actually people problems. So the other key thing that I learned, guys, that's important for you to understand is that you need to have a system and a process for everything that you do. It makes it easier to onboard new employees. right? When you can train them on the systems and processes, it makes it easier to onboard your clients and serve them better when you have a system and a process for everything that you do. And in the event that a company wants to sell, and get acquired, it makes it the valuation of the organization that much more valuable, because it makes it easy for the new owners to step in and quickly learn the systems and processes to be able to continue the success that the previous owner had started. So two key lessons: all business problems are people problems, and that you must have a system and a process for everything that you do. So with that, those two lessons, I started looking around saying, all right, well then where are the people systems, right? What's available out there to help companies learn how to hire better, how to then get those new employees productive faster, and then how to keep them focused and motivated so they continue producing. And my search revealed a lot, but I never found a complete end-to-end system that connected the dots. So in other words, I found hiring systems, but they were not connected to how you onboard and train employees. I found performance appraisal and review systems, but they weren't connected to the onboarding or the hiring. So with that, I decided and got the motivation that I was going to create the system for companies to be able to learn how to hire the right people, how to get them productive, collaborative team members in the first 30 days on the job, and then how do you maintain that focus and motivation so that they're consistently producing as well as stick around, right? Because in today's world, if you're not aware, retention is one of the biggest problems that everybody has, even more than hiring. So those two lessons and things are what led me to the creation of the XP3 talent system. By the way, I also wrote a book called Hire, Train, Retain. Let's see, where am I? There, you can kind of want to move this. So that's the cover of the book. Came out with that about 2 years ago. It's won 3 bestseller badges on Amazon since then. It's gotten us a lot of traction, but all the lessons of what the XP3 talent, or not all, most of the lessons are listed in that book, and you can learn a lot from not only how on the employer side how they hire, so it gives you keen insight to what you need to do to be able to prepare better for interviews. But I'm going to go over some of those as Raleigh asked me to do here in a moment. But it gives you pretty much all the insights and secrets to the book. While I say most, and this is one of the key things that I'd like to share with you guys, that hopefully you embrace and are already embracing. But I learned this lesson from an early mentor of mine. So back when I was running these Vistage CEO peer groups, one of my colleagues who also ran Vistage CEO peer groups out in San Diego, his name was Pat, and Pat at the time was 93 years old, and he was still running 3 groups himself. Him and his young 90-year-old wife were playing doubles tennis every week in their 90s. So imagine that. And I asked Pat, I said, what's the secret to your success? And he said this. He said, as long as you continue learning, you will always be green and growing. But he said, the minute you stop your education, you stop learning, you will become brown and start rotting. So education, continual learning, and improvement is the key. And I embrace that, and it's in everything that I do. And that's why I say most lessons, or things that we're doing in the talent system or in the book, but not all, because it was 2 years ago when I produced it, and we've continually evolved and learned how to do things. So I just started this week on Monday writing volume 2 of the Hire, Train, and Retain. I'm hoping to get that done by the end of this year and have it come out the first part of next year, which will incorporate the new lessons and things that we learned. So that's a little bit about my story, how I got to where I am. I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions on anything I covered before I go into the next topic I'm going to talk to you guys about. So any questions or comments? Nope. All right. I'll take your silence as no questions. So with that, then let me talk to you guys a little bit about what Raleigh asked me to do, which was to help you guys how to prepare for interviews. I also want to help you guys understand the environment that the world's currently in. So if you're not familiar, there's this thing out there called the Great Resignation. So by a shake of heads, any of you guys familiar with it? Have you read about it? So a few of you yes, a few of you no. Okay, so for those that are not, and even for those that have, I'll give you some more insights. So the pandemic, right, made us all work from home. It made people rethink what their priorities in life are. So it used to be, prior to the pandemic, work-life balance, right? Well, as a result of the pandemic, that is now flipped. It is now life-work balance. People who realize that their lives come first, work comes second. That being said, we spend probably more time at work than we do at home a lot of times, if you don't count the time you're sleeping, right? So it really makes sense that you should always put your life first and realize what's most important to you guys. And what came out of that was what people want. And there's tons of surveys and research out there. In fact, LinkedIn did a big study on this at the end of last year, beginning of this year. The Gallup organization, you guys are probably all familiar with, they do a study and a report called the State of the American Workplace Report. So lots of research contributed in this. And what really the conclusion is that people want flexibility, right? We realize that we don't have to be in an office in order to be productive, but that requires managers to change the way that they manage people. So rather than managing to time, punching a clock and hours, must be in the office by 8 and, be there till at least 5. Now the focus is shifted to a focus on results, right? So if people are going to work virtual, you can't manage time, you have to manage results. So in sales, obviously that's pretty easy to do. You have a quota, you have objectives, key performance indicators around those objectives. But what about all the other jobs, right? Or even in a sales context, if you're doing a complex sale that has a long sales cycle, right? Maybe it's 6 to 12 months. How do we know if you're being successful in the first month, in the first 3 months, and so on, before you start closing sales? So there are ways to come up with key performance indicators for all of those measures. And in every role, there's ways to do that. So it's a shift in a dynamic from managing hours to managing results. What that means for you guys is that you need to change your focus when you're interviewing and not tell them about tasks, not tell them simply about your education or, experience and background. What you need to talk about are results that you can produce and how that relates to their company goals. So even in your resume, don't just list a bunch of tasks and stuff, but wherever possible, replace the tasks with bullet points about results you've achieved. And if you've never done the job before, relate to past things you've done about results you achieved and try to connect the dots between that and how that translates to how you can help them achieve their results, right? So focus on results. That's number one. Another thing to help you to prepare for interviews is even come prepared with questions, right? Do your homework, research the company, research the people you're going to interview with, and in today's world, there's no excuse for not being able to find out anything you want to know pretty much, right? With the click of a few buttons on Google. So go to LinkedIn, look up the people that you're going to be interviewing with profiles, learn about them and their background so that and let them know you did this research. Hey, I spent some time, I looked up the company. Talk about things that you like about what you learned. Primarily, focus on the company's mission, focus on their vision, if it's even in there. If it's not on the website, a lot of times the mission will be there. In fact, their values will usually be there, but not always. So if they're not there, ask them, What is your company mission? What are your company values? And what's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish in the next couple of years? So one of the things I teach employers is that one way to gauge a really good candidate is based on the quantity and quality of the questions that they ask. If you're not asking questions, it means you just haven't done your research and you're just looking for a paycheck, right? There's a thing out there called employee engagement. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's really one of the foundational keys to success. And it's what the XP3 talent system is actually built on. And employee engagement is about really creating a psychological connection to the role, meaning the work that you're actually doing, and I'll tell you more about that in a sec, and to the company that you're working for. And primarily an alignment between your values, your beliefs, and what you're passionate about, aligning that with their mission and with their vision. So if it's not on the website, right, ask that as one of your first questions. Tell me about, tell them, I looked at your website, I didn't see it. What is your company mission? What are your values? What is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish in the next couple of years? And then embrace that, listen, and determine, is that something you align with? Is it something you can get passionate about? If it's not, move on, because that job will be short term. You need to find a company that you can get passionate and excited about their mission, vision, and values, and that they align with you. If so, this is going to now transition from just a job where you can make some money to a career that you can grow with and be passionate about. All right. Any questions on that before I go to the next one? Okay. Ask questions about the role, right? And primarily this question: how will I know if I'm being successful in the first month, the first 3 months, the first 6 months? Most managers will not be able to even answer that question, but you're going to impress them by the type of questions you're asking, right? And if they don't have the answer, right, then again, be cautious about taking that role, because then your performance is going to be completely subjective, right? Now, if they say, I don't know, it's a great question, let's figure it out, right? That is a great response from a manager. And it tells you that they're open to a focus on results and working with you, as opposed to being set in their ways and not having any flexibility in how they work with you. All right, so any questions or comments there? Nope. All right, so we'll move on. So again, come prepared with questions, right? I gave you a couple of key ones to ask up front. Another question is, ask what resources are available to help you be successful, meaning, do they have training programs? If so, what does it look like? Describe it, right? Ask what tools and resources you will have to do your job, right? And then decide, you know, is that efficient? Is that going to be helpful to you in order to get your job done? So for example, if some company, I was interviewing for a company and they wanted me to head up their whole, you know, HR talent people division, right? And I'll give you an exact example. So there's a company out there called Window Nation. Anybody ever heard of them? Now, Window Nation is the third largest residential window replacement contractor in the United States. All right. Back in June of 2016, they approached me and said, we have a little problem. We have over 80% turnover, right? So they had hired about 230 people from January to June and turned over 170 of them. Little bit of a problem, right? So first off, if you knew that, right, would you even want to work for that company? So that, by the way, is another question. Ask them if they know what your turnover rate is, if they know what their turnover rate is. and why, right? Why are people leaving that company? And again, if they say, hey, we don't have a turnover problem, our retention's great, right? That's a good sign. That's something you're looking for. If everyone else is leaving, that's a problem, right? So another good question in there, but back to the story. So they said, we have this problem. Can you help fix it? And by the way, they are predominantly a sales and marketing company that just happens to sell windows, meaning 85% of their people are their employees are salespeople. They have a highly structured sales process. Remember, I said it's really important to have processes and systems. Another good question to ask, describe your sales process to me. Do they even have one? Right? Describe to me your sales results. Another good question. You know, give me an example of what your average salespeople produce, not just tell me about the one or two top people, right? Those are good questions. But anyway, back to Window Nation, they were experts and masters in sales and marketing. They had a 10-step, one-call close process, right? And by the way, they'd been in business for 9 years prior to that time in 2016. The previous year, they already did 63 million in sales. They went from 0 to 63 million in 9 years, which is very impressive. The reason for it, they knew how to generate leads, interest in consumers who wanted to learn about replacing their home windows. And they knew how to do this 10-step one-call close process to close these sales. And by the way, so the way that works is you would get assigned a lead and say, hey, Eric, here's a lead tomorrow. Go out and visit the Smiths at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning or 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Your job is to show up. You're going to be there about 2 hours, follow this 10-step sales process, execute it flawlessly. And if you do that, right, by the way, their average closing ratio, right? Any guesses what you think their average closing ratio was for the entire company and about 70 salespeople at the time? Anyone?
15%.
Good guess. Anyone else?
90.
90.
Well, that would be a miraculous result. So, most home improvement contractors in this industry, they average about 25 to 30% close ratio. That's the industry norm. Window Nation was averaging 57%. Think about it, closing almost 1 out of 2 deals or above 1 out of 2 deals that you go on, right? Think what you could accomplish, the money you could make with that. So they had that down great. However, what they didn't have great was they couldn't keep people, right? Why? Because they didn't really have a culture, right? It was haphazard. So it's another thing. Ask your prospective employer that you're interviewing with, describe your culture to me. See if they can even do it. Because that's another thing in today's world. People want to be part of something cool. And that's what a culture really is. But their mission, vision, and values is what describes that culture. So ask them to describe their culture to you. Well, at Window Nation, they had a terrible culture. It was a lack of one. It was a micromanagement culture, right? It was all about the numbers and results and nothing else, right? So again, that got them to where they were, but now it started to become a problem, right? With 80% turnover, you can imagine it was costing them millions of dollars. So they asked, could I fix that? And I said, yes, I can. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to implement the XP3 talent system in your organization. I'm going to train all your people on how it works. How do we hire top talent? How do we get them productive in the first 30 days and make them collaborative team members? And then how do we retain those people, right? To make sure they're happy, continually productive, evolving, learning, growing in their roles, right? So there's a career, not just a job, right? And they said, well, what does that entail, right? So I started describing it. And they said, well, we have another recruiting system that we use. And we're pretty ingrained in that. So we prefer to keep that. So they said, can you still accomplish that result without using, your recruiting system? So what do you think is a good answer to that question? No, that's the answer.
You can, but there's going to be some drawbacks.
Eric, that's exactly right. I said I can, however, there's going to be a learning curve. I now have to come in and learn your system and then determine if it's even good enough, right? And how long do you think it takes to learn and apply and master a new system? In the best case scenario, how many months or years do you think that takes? Anyone?
30 days. They say it takes 21 days to learn a new hobby.
It's to learn the habit, but to get consistent at it. But again, we're not talking a habit. We're talking a whole new system, a technology, a process for recruiting, et cetera, right?
4 years.
So it can take at the minimum 6 to 12 months, but it typically takes several years to work out the kinks, maybe 3 years on average. And that's in the perfect scenario, right? So I said, I can fix your problem, but if I have to learn your system, right, and do that way, one, it's a crapshoot, right? I don't know if I can, be effective with that system and get the results that I know how to get with our system. So I said, if you really want those results, decrease your 80% turnover, get people hire better, get people productive faster and retain them, then I have to do it with the system I know how, because if I do that, I can accomplish those results within 6 to 12 months, the results, not learning something new. And by the way, it took us they agreed to that, and it took us 6 months, and we got the 80% turnover down to 23%. Prior to they do a 2-week sales boot camp to train all their salespeople. So, and that boot camp prior to us was teaching them everything you need to know about a window and how to sell. And then of course their 10-step process, how to sell. That's all it included. So we taught them different things, be above and beyond that. We let them keep doing that because clearly they were doing that well. I didn't mess with what was working, but I taught them how to create a better learning experience, right? I taught them how to help their new employees understand the big picture of the company. So this is a key lesson for you guys as well. What you want the other question, do you have a training onboarding program, and what does that look like to help me learn and get ramped up quickly? That's another great question. If they don't, again, be cautious because that means it's going to be much harder for you to be successful. You're going to have to kind of take your own initiative to get it done, which is possible, but it's a lot better when you're with a company that actually has a system and a training program to help you. Look at what Sales Platoon's doing for you guys, right? Look at what the military did for you guys. If they were trying to figure it out as they go, results wouldn't happen nearly as quickly or at all. So we taught them things like help the new employees understand the bigger picture. For example, this will make sense to you guys. The sales leads, a great advantageous offering that Window Nation has to their salespeople is you have to do zero prospecting. They supply all the leads for you, right? Pretty nice deal. However, prior to me coming there, the salespeople had no idea how those leads were generated, what they cost in order to do it, or who were the people, their teammates supposedly, that were actually doing the work to generate the leads. So one of the things I taught them to do was bring in the marketing team, right? And then introduce the marketing team, and so that they build relationships with those people. So it's not just, oh, those marketing people, but, oh no, this is Sally, this is Bob, this is Mary. These are my teammates who are working hard. And then we had them explain, this is how marketing works here. This is how those leads are generated. This is what it cost us, right? And they knew, because they had a system and a process for everything sales and marketing, they knew exactly what those leads cost, and they had it down to like $700 to $800 per lead, right? Because they were doing TV, radio, billboards. They sponsor the major sports teams in every state that they're in. Back then, by the way, they were only in 4 markets. Today, they're in 18. So they've continued this growth. But by helping them, the salespeople understand that and learning it from their teammates who are doing the work, we noticed something that happened immediately. The complaining about all the shitty leads that they were given. Why do I get the crummy leads, right? That went away. People stopped complaining about the leads because they had a better appreciation for the work that went into it. They now formed relationships with their colleagues who were doing the work, right? So the complaining about the leads went away, a better appreciation for what went into it, and as a result, productivity went up higher. So fast forward, prior to us doing this, other results, the most Window Nation had ever graduated from one of their boot camps was 50% of the people that went into the class, right? The first class we did with them, we graduated 95% of the people that went into the class, right? And actually maybe it was higher. So there were 18 people that went in, 17 graduated, and 10 of them, of the 17, sold the very first lead they were given, which was the 3rd week on the job when they went out in the field. The rest of them took the 2nd or 3rd lead. But as a group, those 17 people sold over $1.5 million their first 30 days in the field. All right. So we knew then that the XP3 talent system was very, very effective. I told them I was only going to be there for a year. They broke 100 million in revenue that year. We opened up the 5th office, which was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We opened the office in February. We projected 5 million in sales for the year. We did 5 million in sales by July of that year. And then we just kept repeating that process. And like I said, today they're doing close to 400 million. They're in 18 markets. They have changed their approaches a lot on doing stuff. I haven't worked with them in a couple of years, so I can't speak exactly, but anyone looking to go into residential home improvement sales, definitely would encourage you to check out Window Nation. So that being said, anybody who's looking to go into B2B sales, we're hiring. So check us out. All right. So anyway, there were a couple of hidden tips and a little story around how our system works, what we created, as well as things you can interview to. So any questions or comments on any of that I covered?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is a question about the asking the interviewer about different questions. Have you ever come across, or is this something that might happen, is if they lie about the answer? Like if you're asking about like their culture, how is it or something, and it's bad, but they're just like, oh yeah, it's good, just so they can get somebody to get hired. Is that something that happens?
Yeah, that happens all the time, Roman. That's a good question. So here's in your research before you go there. Go check out, do a Google search on them. If they're a retail company, check out Yelp reviews. Go to glassdoor.com. If you're not familiar with Glassdoor is primarily about both candidates and employees doing reviews and rating the company and writing comments about what's going on, right? Go look at and see if they even have an About Us page and a career page. And on both of those pages, they should be talking about their culture and their mission and their vision. So let me share my screen. I'll show you guys an example. All right, can you guys see this? It says About Us.
Yes.
All right, so this is our website, right? So when you go to the About Us page, first thing on there is our mission. Then it goes to our core values, right? Then meet the team, right? So there's a bio on everybody, right? And not just the executive team, everybody. Now we're a small company, so there's not a lot of us, but it doesn't matter. When it's only the executive team and nobody else, that's a little bit of a concern. That means they put their emphasis on that team and everyone else is kind of a byproduct. Anyway, then you scroll down, then we start showing, we first off, talk about if you're interested in working with us. Then we show a lot of pictures and different things about, us out doing stuff and having fun at work, whatever. Here's me with a couple, well, Blake's my vice president. This is one of our biggest clients, another client here. So showing that our clients love us. You can go read our testimonials, that are all over the web page from our clients. So here, right here is where this shows up on homepage, on our career page, right? Again, we talk about our process, current openings. So it can either be career page or the About Us page. But if they don't have that stuff, be concerned, right? Because it means either they don't understand the importance of it or they don't have the real information to put out there, right? So several ways you can do some research prior to figure that out, to know whether or not they're telling the truth. But here's another thing, a way to do that. Never accept a yes or no answer. Don't just say, and don't ask a yes or no, closed-ended question. Do you have a good culture? They're going to tell you yes. Ask them to describe your culture. That's a lot different. And then again, can they describe it? We know that, every candidate that we hire for us, we ask them multiple times throughout the interview process, why do you want to work for us? And why should we select you? Right? What I'm looking for when I ask, why do you want to work for us? Is I want you to tell me, hey, I've took a look at your website. I align with your mission, vision, and values. That's something I can get excited about, right? Depending where they're at in the interview process, we try to make sure they get to interview with at least 4 or 5 of us, right? So they're exposed. And everybody is taught, all of my staff are taught, tell them how long you've been with the company, tell them what role you started in and where you are today to show your career progression, right? And how that's helped you learn and grow. Tell them why you love working at XP3 Talent, right? And then tell them a little bit about something about you personally. What do you do when you're not working? So they know that we're also human beings. And probably 90% of people that interview with us tell us the reason they want to work for us is our culture, our mission, our vision, our values, our people. They want to be a part of what we've built and what we do every day, because they'll say, I could see the passion and excitement in everybody that I talk to about what you do. So if you're only interviewing with one person as well, ask, hey, can I meet some other people? Can I meet some of the people I'm going to work with? So you can ask them, right? Hey, what do you think about working here? What are the pros? What are the cons? So don't just take one person's word for it and never ask the yes or no question. That help, Roman?
Yes, Mike. And also, I'm the social media poster for the Sales Platoon page today. If you don't mind, if I could take a group picture of all of us.
Sure. Yep. You saw that. We have even on ours, we have a lot of Zoom pictures. So we're 100% virtual. So all our people are spread everywhere from Virginia Beach on the East Coast to even our newest employees in Anchorage, Alaska. So everything we do is Zoom.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions I can answer for anyone?
I had a real quick question for you before Carlotta goes.
Yep.
You're given a lot of good questions to ask in an interview. Just for everybody's informational purpose, what is a good amount of questions asked during the interview?
So what's a good amount?
Yeah, you don't want to spend an hour.
Never thought about that
them.
question from a candidate side, Lonnie. So it's a good question. Let me think for a sec. I would say that you can't ask too many questions, but you can definitely ask too few, right? And one of the things you might want to do is first ask them, when you're in the beginning of the interview, Even before you go there, how long is the interview scheduled for? Do we have an hour? Do we have 2 hours, 4 hours? That will help dictate how many questions you can ask, right? So for example, we use a 2-part interview process. Our first interviews are a 1-hour Zoom video interview, just like this. We tell the candidates up front, here's the agenda. And I want you to know, Lonnie, that we are not trying to make a hiring decision on this 1-hour call today, right? This is just the second step of our interview process. It's the first time we're really going to have a meet and greet with the candidate and the hiring manager. It's a get to know each other a little better, explore a little bit. So we say, don't think you need to ask every question on this 1-hour video interview to help you make a hiring decision. What I want you to focus on, Lonnie, is ask the questions that you need answered to just determine, do I want to explore this opportunity further? Because the second interview is the in-person interview, or a second Zoom if it's virtual, but those are always a minimum of 2 hours. And we teach our clients, if it's an in-person interview, you got to think about, well, who's going to be involved? And which kind of goes again, do they appear to be organized in do they have an agenda? Do they tell you what the agenda is? Do you know who's going to be involved? That could kind of give you an idea of how much time you have to ask questions. And if it doesn't, ask them. Say, hey, look, I brought a note of questions, but I want to be respectful of your time, right? So, how much time will I have to ask questions, and when is the appropriate time to do so? So put it back on them, which is another key trick too of interviewing. You get asked a question you don't know the answer to. It is perfectly okay and actually a good thing to tell them, let me think about that for a minute, right? And then put some thought to it, right? As opposed to the old, well, let me do some research, I'll get back to you. Now, if after you think about it, you still need to say that, that's fine. But if you take a moment and pause and really think about it, right, you can usually come up with something to answer the question. But if you can't, here's the best thing to do. Ask more questions, right? So they might say, Lonnie, tell me about your sales process that you utilize, right? Well, that's a pretty vague and wide open question, right? There's a lot of things you could potentially answer to that. So clarify, ask more clarifying questions. So if they said, tell me about your sales process, tell me a little bit more about what you want to know about my sales process. Like, what's the starting point? What's the end point, right? Because your sales process might begin with how you prospect and build your pipeline, right? And then every step through. Another person might be thinking, oh, they want to know from the minute that I get in front of my prospect, what's the first thing I do there, and then walk through the steps of the actual sales call. See what I'm saying? So ask clarifying questions, which also buys you more time. But again, remember I said, we gauge a good candidate based on the quantity and the quality of the questions that they ask. And I always teach our recruiters and our hiring managers to be vague with their answers, because a lot of hiring managers want to do all the talking. And that's a big red flag too. If they're not asking you questions, right, or allowing you to ask questions, and they're just showing up, throwing up all over you, and hey, let me tell you all about us and our company and our systems, our processes, our blah, 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 blah. And they talk for 20 minutes without a break, right? That's a problem, because they're speaking at you, not with you, which is also a key thing to learn. And when you're doing sales, the worst thing you can do as a salesperson is show up and throw up, right? Ask great salespeople, ask great questions, and then pause, listen, ask further clarifying questions, which either buys you more time to think about your answer, or it just simply gives you better data that you can give a better answer to. Most interviewers are vague with their questions, and you have to then guess at what they want to know. You have a 50-50 shot at guessing correctly. Don't guess. Ask the question. What specifically do you want to know? Right? From that question. Give me more details so I can make sure that I answer what it is you want to know and not talk about something you don't want to know. That help?
Yes, thank you, Carlotta.
All right. Other questions?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us today. So I see the stand up behind you. And so my question is kind of related to that. It says the ability to hire A players. As a candidate, what would make us an A player?
Great question. A players are not always the best of the best. So what makes an A player? Kind of, I've already talked about a lot of it. Number one, continual learning. You're always learning and able to demonstrate that to the company you're interviewing with, right? And don't just answer with a, hey, I'm smart, I can learn, if you don't know the answer. Tell them how you will go about learning it. So if they say, hey, we use the Zoho CRM system. Have you ever used that before, Carlotta? And you say, no, I haven't used that, right? And say, well, you're going to have to learn how to use it, right? Well, just saying, oh, don't worry, I'm smart, I can learn it. Tell them how you're going to learn it. Hey, look, here's what, so let me give you an example how I'm going to learn it. Even before you give me the job, I'm going to go do some research on Zoho CRM and find out what components are in it. I'll probably do a demo with them so I can learn from them how to utilize it. So before I even start the job, I will have this much knowledge as a starting point, right? Then flip it back on them, right? Do you have a method to train me on that system, or is it completely up to me? So after you tell them what you're going to do, put it back on them is another great way to do it. So continual learning is what makes up an A player, that they're always looking to learn and improve. Never satisfied with where they are. Number two is A players ask great questions, kind of the stuff we've just been talking about. So hence, do your homework, do your research, come prepared, have a pencil and a pad with everything, your questions written down, take a lot of notes on what they say. That's one of the other good things that gauges a good A player is that they're taking notes. They're not just passively listening. And it's okay to say, hey, give me 1 second. I want to make sure I write down what you just said. That was good. Right? So just, it's okay to tell them that. And it's actually makes you look smarter. So those two things go to the top of the list, right? Other things, great attitude, right? Willingness to do what it takes to succeed using good ethics and morals, right? And what else makes an A player stand out? Let me think if there's any key ones I can just throw at you. So continual learning, asking great questions, pausing. Oh, results. Yeah, back to where we started. Focus your resume, answer any questions when possible with giving specific results. Classic example, guys. Don't ever just say, like they say, what's your previous sales success? And your answer is, oh, I've always overachieved quota or 100% of quota. Don't give that answer because that's immediate BS. Nobody always achieves 100%. If you are, you're the one rare, individual in the world. You might come close. You might sometimes exceed it. So rather than just say, oh, I always exceed quota or stuff, give them specifics if you have it. Hey, I'd rather hear from somebody, last year I achieved 87% of quota, right? This year I'm on target for 93%. I'd rather even hear the lower, but know it's real. Or give the actual number. My quota was 1 million. Last year I did 837. That tells me you're being truthful rather than saying, oh, I achieve quota all the time and give me some vague rounded number. So know your numbers, right? Know the results that you can talk to. Even if it's stuff in the, it usually takes me, the first 90 days on the job, is about learning your systems, products, and services, and how fast that goes depends on what would help the company can give you, but also building my pipeline. If you can say, usually I like to get my pipeline up to, 500 prospects within the first 90 days. because that gives me something I can work with going forward. So talk about specific numbers, percentages, dollar amounts, anything you can to point to actual results rather than just vague, statements or vague, numbers or stuff that people will use. So that's what makes an A player stand out. Specifics and focus on results. That help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, what's our time check? How much time do we have? I see it's 10 to the hour.
We got a few more minutes. You can ask anybody else who has a question for you, Mike.
Okay. Who else? Nobody?
Looks like we're all out of questions. Oh, wait, Sam's got one.
Sorry, I have a question. So on the interview process, like I tell people I've never interviewed for a job before, because like when you join the military, they don't really interview you. They're like, let's go.
Right.
Sign up. So I watch all these videos and they're like, oh, you're gonna go through an interview process, and then you're gonna go with a follow-up call, or you're gonna do a secondary interview, and then you're gonna go through this others. So I'm so confused by the whole process. Like, do we change our whole strategy on how we interview based on like what type of interview it is, or how's that work?
Now, you should still, the points I've talked about, you still bring that to the table, right? You just kind of modify it to their format, if you will. And I'll give you an example or two that might make sense. So if you go in for an in-person interview, right? Let's say they sit you at the head of the table, and then they've got people on both sides of the table, right? So one thing is, who do you make eye contact with in that point or in that situation? So that's a question to you, Sam. Who's your eye contact with?
Well, it's depending what type of question it is. If it's a direct question they're asking me, I would direct it at that person.
Yeah.
Or if it's like an open-ended, then I would kind of like swivel between whoever.
Yeah, well, always keep your primary focus on the person that asked the question, but don't exclude the others. So you're right. Look at them occasionally and address a point or two with the rest of the people. By the way, how you actually communicate is critically important. And this is also a sales technique. So did you guys learn mirroring techniques? Or is anybody familiar with what mirroring techniques is in sales? Nope.
I know we look at, in order to make our sales call better, we look in the mirror and try to get a better sound.
That's a different thing. So here's human psychology 101. People like themselves. Most people hire on gut feel. Do I like you or not? Which is a terrible way to do it, but unfortunately, or fortunately for you guys, that is how most people interview, right? So mirroring means you mirror the person you're talking to. If you find, and there's really two simple modes, right? You find that person's, animated, enthusiastic, and said, hey, Sam, how you doing today, man? How's your day going, right? They're real friendly. And again, I don't care if you're interviewing or with a sales prospect. If that's how they communicate, you communicate the same way. Be as enthusiastic, etc., and animated when you're answering their questions. And I don't mean like if you're a real quiet, laid back person, don't become somebody you're not, but at least notch it up a little bit to kind of mirror them. Conversely, you have those people who are very serious, very direct and to the point when they communicate, right? No social stuff whatsoever. It's all about business. If that's how they are, then that's how you become. Even in an interview situation, right? You got 3 people interviewing you. One person's real, enthusiastic and social. You answer their questions that way. That serious, direct person says, all right, Sam, I just need you to tell me about this. Then you look at them and be just as serious, say, okay. Now, if you need to ask a question, again, Be serious about the question and how you ask it, so you get more clarifying info. And in fact, when you are talking to people who are serious, quiet, direct, that's usually a sign that they're introverted people. And what that means, the most important thing you guys need to understand about that is introverts are slow to trust. They're very cautious, introspective people, which is why they don't talk a lot. They're in their head thinking all the time, right? So understand you have to work hard to establish trust and rapport with that individual. Extroverts, that enthusiastic, jovial person you're talking to, extroverts are very quick to trust. They're very optimistic people. You don't have to earn their trust, you have to keep their trust. So I'm one of those extroverted people. You guys all had my trust from the moment I met you. Your job is to keep it, not lose it. Introverts think differently. They're like, no, I don't know who you guys are. I ain't trusting you until you earn my trust. That means if they're quiet, reserved, short and to the point with their questions or what they're saying to you, do the same to them. People like them. They will, on a subconscious, if not conscious level, will start liking you more. And again, you can look left and address this person, serious, quiet, direct. This person over here, when you answer them, a little more upbeat, jovial, enthusiastic. You can adjust. And again, whether you're interviewing or doing sales, it's the same thing. Interviewing is a sales pitch, right? Your job is to sell yourself to that interviewer about why they should select you and hire you. So look at every interview as a sales call, right? Look at every sales call as an interview, right? You're not getting the job unless you win them over. First, you got to win them over. They got to like you, they got to trust you, and they got to know that you're credible. And those are some techniques on how you go about doing that. That help, Sam?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks. I appreciate it, Mike.
You're welcome. All right, we got a couple minutes left. Any last questions, comments?
Ron, you had your hand up. You good?
I did have a question, but I didn't want to go too far over our
All
allotted
right, well, go ahead and ask it. We'll see what we can do.
Okay. So earlier you had said you were talking about finding a job or position about what you would be passionate about. And if you're not passionate about it, you probably shouldn't be working for that company. So my question is, if you ever had an experience, or do you see anything wrong with working for a company you're not passionate about?
There's nothing wrong with it, but you're not going to stick with it very long, right? You're going to constantly be moving around if you're not happy about, and passionate about what they do. Yeah. And again, passionate may be taking the word a little far. You at least got to be in alignment and believe in what they're trying to do, their mission, right? You need to be able to get a little excited about helping them accomplish their vision, particularly in sales, because you guys are on the front line of doing that, right? So did that answer it?
Yeah, I did.
Sure.
Yeah, I did. Well, I was kind of looking to see if you had like any experience of you working for a company to where you weren't, but no, you said it like, as long as you
Well,
have
yeah. Well, the answer to that,
alignment.
Ron, is simple. Yeah, I've been there, and then it didn't work out. I either quit in a short period of time or even got fired because I, was kind of haphazard about what I was doing. It was just a paycheck. But let me close on this, because I know we only got a minute or so left here, and give you guys a little more insight to this great resignation. Here's what's going on in the world, right? Over 47 million people quit their jobs here in the US last year. Since then, we are averaging 4 to 4.5 million people quitting their jobs every month, right? People aren't quitting to stay home and do nothing. They're going to the competition. They're going to another company. They're going to places that are offering flexibility, competitive pay and compensation, and a great culture, mission, vision, values that they can align with. That's why people are quitting. So, other data you need to know. Since 1950 to today, birth rates have been cut in half. We're at 50% of where we were. So I'm 60 years old. I was born in 62. Even back then, it was very common. Most people were having 4 or 5 kids, sometimes more. Nowadays, they have 1 or 2, or sometimes none, right? People were starting to have kids when they were in their 20s, early 20s. Now, they're sometimes going into their 30s before they start having kids. My son just turned 30, no kids. My daughter's 32, no kids yet. Where's my grandkids, right? So birth rates are cut in half. The other side is all the people my age, right, are getting close to retirement. In fact, probably over 30% of the working force population will retire in the next 3 to 5 years. So think about that. Less people coming into the workplace, more people going out. Today, as a result of this, there are 6 available workers for every 10 roles that are trying to be filled. What does that mean? You guys, as interviewees, employees, are in the driver's seat. Everybody's hiring. If you can't find a job that you like and want in today's world, because you ain't looking or you're not doing the right things to interview properly, right? So pretty much I won't say every, but at least probably 3 out of 5 candidates that we talk to that we're interviewing for our clients have at least 1 or 2 other opportunities that they're either exploring further, into the process, or they even have a job offer on the table already that they're just weighing out. Is this a better deal than this one? That gives you guys the power to decide. You have the power of choice. Don't think you need to settle for that first thing that comes along because, oh my God, then what if I don't get another job? Everybody's hiring. As long as you're willing and able to put in the effort and get out there and look and play, you're going to find a great opportunity, right? You just got to work the numbers, just like sales. Interviewing's a numbers game. Find the company that fits what, get set too on what you're looking for. What's important to you? I always ask every candidate, part of our hiring process, what are the top 3 things in order of importance that you are looking for in your next career move? And then I listen and try to determine, does this client of ours that we're recruiting for, or if it's for us, can we meet those 3 things? And I tell our people and our clients, if we can't meet those, move on, because it's going to be a short time hire. So get clear to you. What's most important? Is flexibility most important, that you can work virtual or at least sometimes? Is competitive pay and benefits? Is it just the money? Is it the great culture, working with smart people that you can learn from, a company that values and appreciates people, right? Or that doesn't matter to you. Figure out what's important to you, decide what the ideal company looks like. That will help you figure out where you want to go and how to assess that company to see if it meets your needs. But like I said, you are, in today's world, are in the power seat. Use that power.
Mike, that's some really great information. We really appreciate you coming out and sharing your wisdom with us today. Raleigh and Lonnie had to step out, but
yep.
On behalf of the cohort, thanks again for your time. We're on lunch now till 1:45.
All right. Well, great to meet everybody, and feel free to reach out to me later if I can ever be of help. My email is mike@xp3talent.com. xp3talent.com is our website.